The man in the expensive suit didn't bother lowering his voice. He stood at the far end of the hospital hallway, phone pressed to his ear, speaking with the calm of someone who had never once been told no. "I don't care what the doctors say. Find someone else." A pause. "Charlotte made her choices. I made mine." He hung up, straightened his cuffs, and walked away like he hadn't just sentenced his own sister to death. Elijah Brooks had heard every word. He was nobody, a black single father in a worn jacket, sitting in a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and money, holding his daughter's appointment slip in one hand and 3 weeks of unpaid bills in his head. He had no reason to move, no reason to get involved in the private tragedy of people who would never know his name. But then the name hit him. Charlotte. Something cracked open in his chest, old and buried and sudden. He stood up slowly, walked to the window at the end of the hall, looked through the glass at the woman lying motionless in the hospital bed. His hand moved to his wallet without thinking. He pulled out a photograph, worn at the edges, faded to amber. 2 children, smiling. Summertime. He looked at the woman, then at the photograph. Then he walked straight toward her room. If stories like this one stay with you, hit subscribe. Every week we bring you true human moments that remind you what people are actually made of. Now let's get into it. Elijah Brooks was the kind of man who didn't take up much space. Not physically. He was broad-shouldered, solid in the way that years of physical labor will make a man, but in every other sense. He moved through the world quietly, kept his head down, and asked for very little. He worked construction during the week when there was work and hauled furniture on weekends when there wasn't. He cooked breakfast every morning at 6, packed a lunchbox with whatever the refrigerator offered, and got his daughter to school by 7:45 without fail. That was his life. He had built it carefully, around the edges of everything he didn't have, and he was not ashamed of it. But some mornings like this one, the weight of it sat heavy on his chest before he even got out of bed. 3 weeks behind on rent, a water heater threatening to quit since February, a voicemail from Nia's school about a field trip that required a $40 fee he hadn't figured out yet. He was 43 years old, and every month felt like solving the same impossible equation with fewer and fewer numbers. And yet, he looked across the waiting area at his daughter, and the equation didn't feel quite so impossible. Nia Brooks was 9 years old and already too perceptive for her own good. She noticed things, the way her father's jaw tightened when he looked at the mail, the way he always served her the larger portion and called it an accident, the way he smiled widest right when he was most tired. She noticed all of it and said nothing because she understood, in the quiet, instinctive way of children who have grown up close to struggle, that some things were carried, not discussed. Right now, she was drawing on the back of her numbered ticket with a pencil stub, her small sneakers dangling above the polished floor. She had been perfectly content for 40 minutes. That was Nia, steady, self-contained, requiring so little while somehow giving him everything he needed to keep going. He watched her and thought, whatever else I've gotten wrong, I got her right. They were at Hargrove Medical Center because Nia's pediatrician had relocated her practice 8 months ago, and this was where the insurance network reassigned them. Elijah had requested an unpaid day off to make the appointment. His supervisor had not been pleased, and Elijah had not argued. He never argued. He just absorbed it and kept moving. Hargrove was the kind of hospital he associated with other people's lives. The floors gleamed. The staff spoke in measured, courteous tones. The chairs in the waiting area were cushioned. Small things, but they added up to a clear, unspoken message. You are here on borrowed time and borrowed ground. Elijah was used to that message. He had been receiving it in various forms his entire life. He unfolded Nia's appointment slip and smoothed it against his knee. Routine checkup, nothing serious. They would be in and out within 2 hours. That was the plan. He had been sitting in that hallway for exactly 47 minutes when the man in the expensive suit appeared at the far end of the corridor, pressed a phone to his ear, and began to speak, loudly, carelessly, with the particular confidence of a man who had never once considered that someone like Elijah Brooks might be listening. The man's name, Elijah would learn later, was Victor Hale. But in that moment, he was simply a voice, measured, indifferent, carrying down the polished corridor with the ease of someone who had never needed to whisper. "The doctors have been calling me all morning. I understand the situation." A pause. "No, you're not listening. I said I understand it. That doesn't mean I'm going to do anything about it." Elijah didn't mean to listen. He looked down at the appointment slip in his hand, tried to focus on the printed text. Nia's name, the time, the room number. But the voice had a quality that made it impossible to ignore. Not loud, just utterly, completely unbothered. "The blood type situation is their problem to solve, not mine. There are donor registries. There are other options." Another pause, shorter this time. "I am not going to sit in a hospital bed and let them stick a needle in my arm for someone who hasn't spoken to me in 4 years. Not even for her." Nia glanced up from her drawing. She looked at Elijah, then in the direction of the voice, then back at her drawing. She said nothing. Elijah's jaw tightened. "Tell them whatever you need to tell them." The man's voice dropped slightly, not from shame, but from boredom, the tone of a conversation that had already gone on too long. "Charlotte is a grown woman. She built her life exactly the way she wanted it. I'm not going to rearrange mine because her body is failing her. That's final." The call ended. Elijah sat perfectly still. Charlotte. He told himself it was a common name. He told himself the tightening in his chest was nothing, that he was a tired man in a hospital waiting room, and his mind was playing tricks. He almost convinced himself. Then the man ended his call, straightened his jacket, and moved down the corridor, passing directly in front of the window at the far end of the hall. And as he passed, Elijah's eyes followed him, and then moved past him, and settled on the room behind the glass. A woman, motionless, pale against white sheets, with monitors on either side of her and an IV line running into her left arm. Her face was turned slightly toward the window, as though even unconscious, some part of her was still reaching for light. Elijah stood up. He didn't decide to. His body simply moved, the way it did when something older and deeper than thought took over. He crossed the hallway slowly, stopped at the window, and looked. For a long moment, he just looked. The face was older than he remembered. Of course it was. It had been more than 30 years. But the structure of it was the same. The line of the jaw, the slight upturn at the corner of the mouth, even in stillness. The particular way her brows sat, even now, as though she were about to ask a question. He knew that face. He had known it since he was 7 years old. Behind him, Nia's voice came soft and careful. "Dad? You okay?" He didn't answer right away. He pressed one hand lightly against the glass and stared at the woman in the bed who was running out of time while her own brother walked away down a polished corridor without looking back. Then he turned to Nia. "I need you to stay right here," he said quietly, "right in that chair. If you need anything at all, you go to that nurse's station right there and ask for someone to help you. You see that woman at the desk?" Nia looked. "The one with the blue badge?" "That's her. Her name's Melissa. You go to her, okay?" Nia looked at him with those two perceptive eyes of hers. "Is someone hurt?" "Yes," he said. "Someone I used to know." He turned back toward the window one more time. Then he reached into his wallet. The photograph was old enough that the paper had softened at the edges, worn smooth by years of being folded and unfolded in the same wallet through the same long days. He had carried it so long he sometimes forgot it was there. The way you forget about a scar, not because it stopped mattering, but because it became part of you. 2 kids, a summer afternoon, a chain-link fence in the background, and a patch of dry grass that passed for a yard. The girl was grinning wide, one arm thrown around the boy beside her with the easy confidence of someone who had never once questioned whether she was wanted. The boy, small for his age, wearing a shirt 2 sizes too big, was smiling too. But his smile was quieter, like he couldn't quite believe his luck. She had been 4 years older than him. In the hierarchy of childhood, 4 years is a significant distance, and yet Charlotte had never treated it like one. She had lived in Building C of the Sycamore Gardens apartment complex. His family had been in Building A. She was 12 when he was 8. old enough that most kids her age would have looked past him entirely. She never did. The memory came back the way memories do when you stop trying to hold them at arm's length, all at once, and with a weight that pressed behind the eyes. He had been 8 years old, a construction site 3 blocks from Sycamore Gardens, a dare he should have walked away from, a rusted beam that gave way faster than anyone expected. He remembered the fall, and then he remembered the ceiling of an emergency room, and then he remembered a doctor's voice saying words like rare blood type and critical window, and we're running out of time. What he knew, what his mother had told him years later quietly, like it was something almost too fragile to say out loud, was that it had been Charlotte. 12 years old and already stubborn enough to argue with nurses. She had been in that same waiting room with her mother, overheard enough to understand what was happening, and walked up to the desk. When they told her she was too young to make that decision alone, she went and got her mother, who signed the form. And that was that. She had never made a big deal of it. Not once. The one time Elijah had tried to say thank you the way the moment deserved, she had waved him off with that characteristic impatience of hers. You would have done the same. Don't make it weird. But before they lost touch, before her family's circumstances changed and pulled her into a different world entirely, he had made her a promise. They were sitting on that same patch of dry grass from the photograph, and he had said it plainly, the way children say things before they learn to be afraid of their own words. Wherever you end up, whatever you become, if you ever need me most, I'll be there. She had looked at him sideways. That's a big promise, Eli. I know. He folded the photograph carefully and held it in his closed fist. Behind him, Nia was watching. He could feel it. That quiet, patient attention she turned on him whenever she sensed something important was happening that she didn't fully understand yet. He thought about what it would mean to walk away right now, to go back to the chair, pick up the appointment slip, and let the world continue sorting itself out without his involvement. He was nobody here. He had bills. He had a daughter. He had every reasonable excuse a man could need. He looked at Nia. She had set down her pencil. He thought, what do I want her to see? Then he turned, tucked the photograph into his breast pocket, and walked toward the room. The nurse at the station outside Charlotte Hale's room was polite, the way people are polite when they are also preparing to say no. Sir, this is a restricted area. Are you family? No, Elijah said, but I think I can help. The nurse, a young woman with tired eyes and a badge that read Melissa, looked at him the way he had been looked at his entire life in rooms like this one. Not hostile, just measuring, taking in the worn jacket, the calloused hands, the fact that he did not belong here and both of them knew it. The patient is in critical condition, Melissa said carefully. If you'd like to speak with someone from the family. The family just left, Elijah said. I watched him walk out 5 minutes ago. Melissa's expression shifted, barely, but enough. What kind of help are you referring to? Blood, he said. She needs a specific type. I might have it. I'd like to be tested. There was a pause, the kind that fills up with calculation. Then Melissa picked up the phone. And before she turned away, she glanced down the hall toward the waiting area, where a small girl in a yellow jacket was sitting alone, drawing carefully on a slip of paper. Is that your daughter out there? Yes, Melissa nodded once. I'll keep an eye on her. It took 20 minutes for the attending physician to appear. Dr. Raymond Foster, mid-50s, silver-haired, with the practiced composure of a man who had delivered enough bad news to make it a skill, looked Elijah over with careful neutrality, and then asked him calmly why he believed he was a potential match. Elijah explained, briefly, factually, without embellishment. The blood type, the childhood connection, the reason he happened to be in this hospital on this particular morning. Dr. Foster listened without interrupting. We'll need to run a compatibility panel. It takes time we may not have in abundance, but it's the only way to know for certain. He paused. You understand this is entirely voluntary? Yes, Elijah said. Foster studied him for a moment. Then he nodded once and told Melissa to take Elijah to the lab. That was when Victor Hale came back. Elijah didn't see him approach. He heard him. That same unhurried voice, now stripped of its telephone calm and edged with something colder. "What is this?" Victor had returned. Perhaps some last thin thread of conscience had snagged on his way out, and come back to find a stranger standing outside his sister's room, speaking with her doctor like he had any right to be there. "Who are you?" Victor's eyes moved over Elijah with the swift efficiency of a man accustomed to assessing threats. "How do you know Charlotte?" "We grew up near each other," Elijah said. "A long time ago." "That's not an answer." "It's the one I have." Victor turned to Dr. Foster, his voice shifting into the register of a man who expected to be deferred to. "I'm Charlotte Hale's brother and next of kin. I want to know why this man is being given access to her medical situation." Dr. Foster met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Hale, your sister is in critical condition. This gentleman has voluntarily offered to be tested for compatibility. Given the circumstances, I think you'll agree that any viable option is worth pursuing." The silence that followed had a particular quality. Victor understood what was inside it, the unspoken fact that he himself had declined, that the doctor knew it, and that the stranger standing beside him had stepped forward precisely where he had stepped back. His jaw tightened. "I want to be informed of every development," he said finally. He walked to the far end of the hallway and stood there with his arms crossed, the posture of a man who had not left, but was refusing to arrive. The lab was small and fluorescent lit, designed for function rather than comfort. Elijah sat in the chair beside the draw station and rolled up his sleeve without being asked. The technician worked with quiet efficiency, and in the stillness of that room, no task in front of him, nothing to do but sit and wait, Elijah thought about the strangeness of the day. He had woken up this morning with unpaid rent and a failing water heater. He had driven to this hospital for a routine appointment. He had heard a man abandon his sister over the phone, and now here he was. He didn't think of it as heroic. He was built for a different kind of self-narration. He thought of it the way he thought about most of the things he did, as the only available option once you removed every choice that would require you to be someone you weren't. Dr. Foster appeared in the doorway 40 minutes after the blood draw. His composure was intact, but his eyes were different, lighter. "Mr. Brooks," the panel came back. Elijah waited. "You're compatible," Foster paused. "More than compatible, actually. The specificity of this match is unusual. In 30 years of practice, I've seen this particular combination twice." He stopped. "You said she gave you blood when you were children." "Yes. Then what's happening here is, it's the same blood, essentially, moving in the opposite direction." He said it like a man who had not fully decided whether it was a medical observation or something else entirely. Elijah said nothing. He just rolled his sleeve back down, stood up and said, "Tell me what you need me to do." Victor Hale was waiting in the hallway when Elijah came out of the lab. He had the look of a man who had spent the last 40 minutes deciding exactly what he was going to say. "I'd like a word," Victor said. It wasn't a request. They moved to a small alcove near the stairwell. Victor stood with his shoulders squared, and he looked at Elijah the way he had from the beginning, as a problem to be managed. "I've been informed you're a match," Victor said. "That's right. I want to understand your interest in this situation. My sister is a wealthy woman, a prominent one. People have tried to insert themselves into her life before under various pretexts. Whatever you're expecting to gain from this, financially or otherwise, it won't happen. I'll make sure of that personally." Elijah looked at him with the particular patience of a man who had been underestimated so many times it had stopped surprising him. "I'm not expecting anything," Elijah said. "Everyone expects something." "Then you've been spending time with the wrong people." Victor's eyes narrowed. "I can have you removed from this building within the hour. If I decide you're a liability to my sister's care, I have the relationships with hospital administration to make that happen." "You could do that," Elijah said, "and then Charlotte would still need blood that only I can give her. So that's your call." The silence between them was long and flat. Victor shifted his weight. A small movement, but the first one he'd made since the conversation started. "Name a number," he said, quieter now. The attorney's posture had dropped an inch. Underneath it was something older and less composed. "I'll have it transferred by end of day. You walk out, this conversation never happened, and Charlotte never knows you were here." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "She saved my life when I was 8 years old," he said. "Did you know that?" Victor said nothing. "I almost died in a construction accident. She was 12. She heard about it in a waiting room, walked up to the desk and asked to be tested. Nobody asked her to. She just did it because I was her friend and I needed her." Elijah paused. "She never told anyone, never made anything of it, just did it." He let that sit. "So when you ask me what I want," Elijah continued, "the answer is nothing you can put a number on. I want to do what she did for me. That's it. That's the whole thing." Victor stared at him. Something moved behind his eyes, too fast and too private to name. It might have been shame. Whatever it was, he closed it off quickly, the way a man does when he has had long practice keeping certain rooms locked. "After the procedure," Victor said finally, "I expect you to have no further contact with her." Elijah looked at him for a long moment. "I'll stay until she wakes up," he said simply. "After that, it's her choice, not yours." He turned and walked back toward the nurse's station before Victor could respond. The procedure took less time than Elijah expected. He was moved to a room 2 doors down from Charlotte's, settled into a reclining chair, and connected to the apheresis equipment. Before coming back, he had stopped by the waiting area, crouched beside Nia's chair and told her, in the simple terms a 9-year-old deserved, that he needed a little more time, that someone nearby was very sick and he was going to try to help, that Melissa knew where he was, and that he would be back before she had time to run out of things to draw. Nia had looked at him with those steady eyes of hers. Then she looked at his arm. "Are they going to put a needle in you?" she asked. "Yes." She thought about this seriously. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and produced a small adhesive bandage, the kind with cartoon stars on it, left over from her last checkup, and pressed it into his palm. "For after," she said. He had held it tightly all the way back down the hall. The procedure took 53 minutes. When it was done, Dr. Foster appeared in the doorway. His composure was intact, but his eyes were different, lighter. "It's working," he said. "Her numbers are responding. It's early, but—" He stopped, allowed himself a brief, controlled exhale. "It's working." Elijah nodded. Foster looked at him a moment longer than was strictly necessary. "What you did today, Mr. Brooks, I want you to know that I understand what it cost, not just physically." Elijah looked down at the small bandage on his inner arm, not the medical one the nurses had applied, but the one with cartoon stars, which he had pressed on over it before they could cover it with tape. "It didn't cost me anything," he said. "It was already hers." Foster left. Elijah sat in the quiet room for a while longer. His arm was sore. He was tired in the deep, structural way of a man who has been holding something up for a very long time. He reached into his breast pocket, touched the folded photograph. Then he got up and went to find his daughter. Nia was on her 4th page of the notepad Melissa had produced from the supply closet. Having exhausted her number ticket, the back of a hand hygiene pamphlet, and 2 vending machine napkins in the hours he'd been gone. She looked up when she saw him coming, and her eyes went straight to his arm. "The star bandage is still on," she observed. "It's doing its job," he said. He settled into the chair beside her. "Now we wait a little longer. You okay?" She held up the notepad. "Melissa got me this." "Good," he said. And something in his chest, held tight for the better part of a day, released just slightly. They sat together in the corridor as the afternoon turned slowly toward evening, Nia drawing and Elijah watching the door at the end of the hall, both of them waiting in the particular silence of people who trust each other enough not to fill it. Charlotte Hale woke up at 6:42 in the evening. Not dramatically, no sudden gasp, no eyes flying open. She came back to consciousness the way tide comes in. Slowly, each wave of awareness carrying her a little further than the one before. First there was light, then the weight of the blanket, Then the sound of the monitors, steady and mechanical, and the particular quality of silence that only exists inside hospitals after visiting hours. Then there was a man sitting in a plastic chair by the door. She blinked. She registered. Male, broad-shouldered, dark jacket, head tilted back slightly against the wall behind him. Not asleep. His eyes were open, fixed on some middle distance across the room. He hadn't noticed she was awake yet. There was something about the way he sat, not relaxed exactly, but settled, like a man who had decided to be somewhere and had stopped arguing with the decision. "Hey," she said. Her voice came out thin and dry. He looked at her immediately, and something in his face, some careful, contained thing, came undone just slightly at the edges. "Hey," he said back. Charlotte looked at the ceiling, gathering herself. Her last clear memory was her office, a Tuesday afternoon, a meeting that had run long, a headache she had told herself was nothing. Then the paramedics, then fragments, then this. "How long?" she asked. "About 14 hours, he said, give or take." She turned her head and looked at him properly for the first time. The face was older. The jaw was heavier, the lines around his eyes deeper, the boy she remembered now fully displaced by the man he had become. But the eyes were the same. That particular quality of attention, steady and unhurried, that had always made her feel, even as a child, like whatever she said to him actually mattered. Her breath caught. "Eli," she said, not a question. "Yeah," he said. She stared at him. The monitors beeped. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled past. "You were here," she said slowly. "You're the one who—" "Yes." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, other things had sharpened alongside her vision. "Where's Victor?" she asked. The pause that followed was brief but complete. Elijah didn't look away from her, didn't arrange his expression into anything evasive. He simply held her gaze and let the pause speak the part he wasn't going to say out loud. She understood it immediately. Charlotte had built her career on the ability to read a room, to hear what wasn't being said as clearly as what was. And what she read now, in Elijah's silence and in the particular way he was looking at her, with steadiness and sorrow and something that was not quite pity but was adjacent to it, told her everything about her brother that she had not wanted to know. She turned her face toward the window. Outside, the sky had gone the deep blue of early evening, that specific shade that exists only in the 20 minutes before full dark. She stayed like that for a long time. Elijah didn't move. He just stayed in his chair by the door and waited, the way he had always been good at waiting. When Charlotte finally turned back from the window, her face was composed. Not cold, composed. There was a difference, and Elijah had always known it. Cold was what Victor did. What Charlotte did was something harder and more deliberate. She took the thing that hurt her, looked at it directly, and then decided how she was going to carry it. She had been doing that since she was 12 years old, probably before. "Tell me what happened," she said. "From the beginning." So he did. He told it plainly, without drama. He had been in the waiting area with his daughter. He had heard Victor's phone call. He had recognized her name and then her face through the glass, and he had gone to the nurse's station and asked to be tested. He told her about the compatibility panel, about the 53 minutes in the reclining chair, about his daughter's cartoon star bandage pressed over the medical tape on his arm. Charlotte listened without interrupting. Her eyes stayed on him the whole time, steady and unreadable in the way they got when she was thinking harder than she was letting on. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You still have the photograph?" It wasn't a question. She had seen him reach for his breast pocket, the small, habitual gesture of a man checking that something was still there. He took it out and held it toward her. She took it carefully, the way you take something you are afraid of dropping. She looked at it for a long time. The two children, the chain-link fence, the dry summer grass, the girl with her arm thrown around the boy like she owned the whole afternoon. "I have one too," she said quietly. "Different copy, same day." She paused. "It's in my desk at the office. I've moved offices 4 times in 15 years, and it has come with me every single time, and I have never once been able to explain why. Elijah said nothing. Charlotte set the photograph down on the blanket in front of her, smoothing it gently with 2 fingers. "You would have done the same," she said, almost to herself. The echo of her own words, 30 years removed. "You told me not to make it weird," he said. She looked up at him, and for the first time since she had woken up, something in her face loosened. Not a smile exactly, but the thing that lives just underneath a smile, the thing that comes before it. "I was 12, she said. "I didn't know what I was talking about."
You don't have to turn around.
"You knew exactly what you were talking about," he said. "You always did."
You don't have to see
The monitors continued their steady rhythm. The evening had deepened outside the window, the last blue finally giving way to dark.
Right behind you.
Charlotte looked at the photograph again. When she spoke, her voice was even, but there was something underneath it she wasn't trying very hard to conceal. "He really just walked out." "Yes," she nodded slowly. "Once. The way you nod when you are confirming something you already knew but had hoped you were wrong about. There was grief in it, the dull, settling kind that comes from finally letting go of an image of someone you had held on to past the point of evidence." She was still holding that grief quietly when the door opened. Victor Hale stepped into the room. He had composed himself in the hallway, his jacket straightened, his expression arranged into something that might pass for concern at a distance. But Charlotte had known him her entire life, and distance had never been her problem. "Charlotte," his voice was careful, calibrated. "I'm glad you're awake. I've been here all day. I was just down the hall. I know where you were," she said. The calibration in his voice faltered slightly. "I want to explain." "I don't need you to explain." She said it without heat, without drama, just evenly, with the full weight of someone who had already done the math and arrived at a number she could live with. "I know what happened, Victor. I know what you said on that phone call. I know you left." She paused. "And I know who stayed." Victor's eyes moved to Elijah. Something crossed his face, too many things at once to separate cleanly. He opened his mouth. Charlotte spoke first. "You should go," she said. "We'll talk about the rest later. Not tonight." The room held its breath. Victor looked at his sister for a long moment. Then he straightened his jacket, turned, and walked back out the door. His footsteps were controlled and even down the hallway. A man who knew, for the first time in a long time, that he had lost something he could not buy back. Charlotte watched the empty doorway for a moment after he was gone. Then she looked back at Elijah. "You said you have a daughter," she said. "Nia," he said. "She's 9. Is she here?" "She's in the waiting area. She's been drawing on every piece of paper she could find for the last 6 hours. She's probably run out by now." Charlotte looked at him, really looked at him, the full weight of her attention settling on him the way it used to when they were kids, and she had decided something was worth taking seriously. "Go get her," she said. "I want to meet her." Nia had, in fact, run out of paper. She had exhausted her number ticket, the pamphlet, the napkins, and 3 pages of Melissa's notepad before Elijah appeared back down the hallway. She looked up at him, then at his arm, then back at his face. "The star bandage is still on," she observed. "It's doing its job," he said. He crouched down to her level. "How do you feel about meeting someone?" He brought her to the doorway first, knocked lightly on the open door, let Charlotte see them both before they came in. Charlotte had pushed herself up against the pillows into something closer to sitting, and when she saw Nia, her expression did something quiet and unguarded that she didn't bother to conceal. Nia walked in with the careful curiosity of a child entering a space she wasn't sure about yet. She stood at the foot of the bed and looked at Charlotte with those steady, assessing eyes. "You were sick," Nia said, not unkindly, just factual. "I was," Charlotte said. "I'm doing better now. My dad helped." "He did." Charlotte glanced at Elijah briefly. One look, carrying more than a look usually carries. "He's good at that." Nia considered this. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and produced the notepad Melissa had given her, opened to the page she'd most recently finished. It was a drawing, loose and confident in the way children's drawings are, unafraid of proportion. of a building that was clearly meant to be a hospital, with a sun in the corner and several figures of varying sizes standing outside it. "I made this while I was waiting," she said, and held it out to Charlotte. "You can have it if you want. I have more." Charlotte took it. She looked at it for a long moment, smoothing the edge of the paper with her thumb the same way she had smoothed the photograph.
I stand here.
"Thank you, Nia," she said. And the way she said it, quietly, directly, like the gift was exactly what it was and deserved to be treated accordingly, made Nia stand a little straighter. They left as the hospital was shifting into its nighttime register. The lights dimmed in the corridors, the foot traffic thinned, the building settling into the slower rhythm of its after-hours self. Elijah and Nia walked through the sliding glass doors and out into the evening air. It was cool and faintly damp, the smell of rain somewhere nearby that hadn't arrived yet. The parking lot lights had come on, casting long, pale columns across the asphalt. Nia slipped her hand into his. They walked in silence for a moment. Then she looked up at him. "Who was she?" Nia asked. "The lady." Elijah thought about it. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he wanted to give her the right one. "An old friend," he said. "Someone who did something important for me a long time ago when I needed it most." Nia processed this. "And you did something important for her today." "I tried to." She nodded, satisfied with this, and looked ahead. Then, after a few more steps, "Is she going to be okay?" "Yeah," he said. "She's going to be okay." Nia seemed to accept this completely, in the way that children accept facts delivered by people they trust. She looked ahead again, her small sneakers scuffing lightly against the pavement, already moving forward, already ready for whatever came next. Elijah watched her. He didn't look back at the building. He didn't need to. He just kept walking, beside his daughter in the cool evening air, one step at a time, lighter than he had been in years. There's a kind of promise that gets made in childhood that the world tells you not to trust, because you were too young to understand what you were committing to, because too much time has passed, because the distance between who you were and who you've become makes the original words feel like something said by a stranger. But sometimes the promise turns out to be the most real thing you ever said. Elijah Brooks walked into that hospital as nobody, a man with worn-out boots and overdue rent, and a daughter depending on him to keep going. He walked out as someone who had kept a 30-year-old promise to a woman the world had long since placed in a different category than his own. He didn't do it for recognition. He didn't do it for reward. He did it because a 12-year-old girl once sat in a chair, rolled up her sleeve, and decided that a friend's life was worth more than her own discomfort. And he had never forgotten. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. We tell stories like this one every single week. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, not because the world was watching, but because it was the right thing to do. That's the only reason that ever matters.